All right, it's welcome to the Lovecraft EZine Sunday video talk show. Today is Sunday, January the 25th, 2015, and as usual, I've got Joe Pulver is sick, so Joe, I'm sure you'll watch the recorded version of this later. I hope you're feeling better soon. And as usual, we got Matthew Carpenter here, Pete Rollick, and Rick Lay, and we're going to give away 6 books on today's show. And when I say that, Joe Pulver had the idea to, a lot of people watch the shows live, but the vast majority, many more, watch the recorded version of the show, within a couple of days. So I appreciate you guys that do that too. And Joe had a great idea to reward you guys as well. So I'm going to do this drawing on Wednesday instead of at the end of this show. But we're going to give away 2 copies of The Sea of Ash to viewers. To enter, all you got to do is keep watching. We'll tell you how to enter in a little bit. It won't be the usual way. 2 print copies of The Sea of Ash. And then what else did I say? We're going to do a Kindle copy of, I need to pull up the thing here, of one of Rick's books. Which one did I say, Rick?
Well, you said it was Secret Histories, but I have 2 books names with the title Secret Histories. One is Criminal Masterminds, and one is Daring Adventurers.
I think it was Daring. Yeah, it's Daring. No, yeah, Rick Lay's Secret Histories, Daring Adventures. That's the one. And we're going to give away a Kindle copy of that. Like I said, 2 print copies of The Sea of Ash, 1 Kindle copy of Blood Will Have Its Season by Joe Pulver. Yeah, thank you. There's the print edition.
That's a good book for a Robert E. Howard fan.
Okay.
There's 3 articles on Robert E. Howard's heroes, and not Conan, the obscure ones. Lesser known ones, I should say. Francis X. Gordon and so forth.
Okay. And then what else? 1 print copy of Reanimators, 1 print copy of The Weird Company, both by Pete Rollick. So that's 6 books total. And I'm doing more than usual because we've got more of a people that we're giving them away to. So I guess you might say, since we're including the audience that doesn't watch live, that watches later. So anyway, keep watching for your chances to win that. But I'm sure your only motivation is our absolutely entertaining discussions. So you don't even care about the free books.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
It dawned on me that maybe people who enter have already read Reanimators.
Mm-hmm.
So they might like Weird Company, or they hadn't read Reanimators and they want to start with Reanimators. So if they want to specify one or the other, it doesn't matter to me.
Okay, that sounds fine. Doesn't matter to me either. As long as we give away 6 books and people are happy. Okay, so, and by the way, to check out Joe's books, Rick's books, Pete's books, just go to their websites. They lead right to their Amazon page. JoePulver.com, PeteRollick.com, and RickLay.com. And Lay is L-A-I. So anyway, I was, and somebody on the message board pointed this out. I was reading an article on the internet a day or 2 ago about the what do they call it? The nuclear watchdog scientists, or whatever they are, have moved that clock to 3 minutes till midnight. Did you guys read that?
Yeah.
Which struck me as pretty damn unusual. And which reminded me of Watchmen, when they move it to 5 minutes before midnight, and the world's about to end, a week later, everyone thinks. So I think we're really in trouble for some reason. Anyway, it reminded me of Watchmen, and I started thinking about, we've discussed this briefly in the past, a long time ago, about some of the Lovecraftian themes in Watchmen, and Alan Moore, and, the Courtyard, and the Neonomicon, and all that stuff. So thought we could talk about that. if we run out of things to talk about, I'm sure the people on the message board will give us ideas. But that's a lot, because I think there's a lot of different Lovecraftian themes in Watchmen.
Well, I think we would probably better start with Alan Moore.
Sure, go ahead.
Who is a very interesting person. I think there is no doubt he is super intelligent and a great innovator, and he's very thoughtful with what he does. Not that that necessarily makes him right, but he's got really great credentials in terms of Lovecraftiana, I think, because not just the Courtyard and Neonomicon, which we can talk about, but he did that thing, Yuggoth Cultures. You know, he's writing Providence. He supposedly wrote a Lovecraftian novel that he left in a taxi cab. So he's got quite a bit of experience, and he's given this all quite a lot of thought. So I don't think anyone can say he doesn't have the chops for, you know, playing in this sandbox. And I think someone who's read Lovecraft that deeply, you're probably not going to be able to escape some form of influence.
Yeah, I mean, who knows if all that in Watchmen was deliberate or not, but he's obviously a huge fan.
He's also uses some Lovecraftian stuff in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yes. Yes, he does.
Like what?
He did a P.G. Wodehouse, H.P. Lovecraft crossover. Sort of like what Peter Cannon did with Scream for Jeeves and Molly Tanner did. So basically that's all these ridiculous characters from P.G. Wodehouse encountering a Lovecraftian monster, Bertie Wooster and Jeeves.
Right. And then there's another one where Randolph Carter appears. These are all in the back pages of the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Wasn't that a weird time travel kind of story?
Yeah, it was.
I think the Molochs from the Time Machine were in there somewhere.
Right.
Oh, by the way, did you guys see that this makes me think of it, that I posted the other day? I found an article posted on the EZine page that the writer of the upcoming Doctor Strange movie is dropping some hints about Lovecraftian themes. And, you know, I tagged Joe on that, who immediately freaked out and said he doesn't want that in the movie.
Yeah,
but if there's anything in there, it's probably just going to be some minor themes. That would be my guess. But
well, you know, they do have Shumagorath, but
that's right.
I think Joe and I would rather see Dormammu. We'd rather see the classic Kirby extra-dimensional entities, which are sorcerers rather than tentacle monsters.
Yeah.
Right. And the mindless ones, right?
Yeah, the mindless ones. Who is sort of a monstrous version of Cyclops from the X-Men is the best way I can describe them.
Yeah.
So
now, if you want to read more, strictly for direct Lovecraftian references, I think you have to start with the Courtyard. You can certainly never have read Lovecraft and enjoy the Watchmen all on its own merits. But if you're interested in something that's purely Lovecraftian, the place to start, I think, is the Courtyard, which I thought was perhaps, I still think is probably the best Lovecraftian-themed comic that's not a direct adaptation of Lovecraft's work.
Well, yeah, by all means. I think that I've read the first comic in the Courtyard, and then I think someone sent it to me. I think it was one of you guys, and then I set it aside and forgot to pick it back up, which amazes me because now I'm excited to read it.
Yeah, I think I sent you a whole bunch of
I've read that.
Yeah, it's in Neonomicon.
Right. If you've read Neonomicon, you've read the Courtyard.
That's
I'm
the
thinking some guy that's like a federal agent in a hotel or something.
Right. It's the beginning of Neonomicon is the Courtyard.
Right.
Oh, I
Well,
see.
the compilation graphic novel is.
Okay.
Neonomicon was 4 separate standalone comics
Right.
you know, so let's. So some people may not have the compilation graphic novel.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
There's also a prose short story version, which was in Story Wisdom. Was that the
Yep. The original Story Wisdom.
original Story Wisdom anthology?
Is that D.M. Mitchell edited that? Can't remember. It's on the shelf someplace.
Yeah.
And somewhere I have a something called the Creation Reader, which has 2 short poems or prose poems in it by Alan Moore, which are Lovecraftian.
Oh, that's interesting.
Let's see if you guys talk. I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead, Rick. I'm sorry.
I was going to say my familiarity with Watchmen is only from the movie. I really didn't see anything particularly Lovecraftian in the storyline.
It kept to the general plot pretty well, except for the ending, which I won't get into too specifically, although anybody watching this I would hope has at least seen the movie and or read the book. But one or the other, or both, which you've seen the movie, Rick. I really love the movie, but I love the comic more. I've watched the movie several times.
But what's Lovecraft? What do you feel is Lovecraftian in the story?
Okay, let's just talk about, first of all, the universe is completely amoral.
Mm-hmm.
And the people in it, they're not good. Do you understand? The people who are making the decisions about how the rest of us are going to live and what's going to be allowed,
mm-hmm.
those people who have power, they have absolutely... They're amoral.
Okay, but enough about the real world. Let's talk about Watchmen.
Yeah, I'm talking about that.
I know. Okay.
That to me was the most Lovecraftian thing about it of all.
That's a good point.
So Richard Nixon is Lovecraftian in a way, because there's Richard Nixon as president.
Yeah, look, I should say this.
I wasn't even thinking of Richard Nixon. I was thinking of, like, for example, the one character whose machinations are causing everything to come to fruition.
I get who you mean. We won't
interested in right or wrong.
Yeah, we won't reveal who that is.
Yeah, okay, good idea. Well, anyway, I got to say this though. I am not by any means trying to say, damn it, Watchmen is a Lovecraftian work. I'm not saying that at all. I just recognize that the guy who wrote it, Alan Moore, is a huge Lovecraft fan, and I think there are quite a few Lovecraftian themes in there, in Watchmen, and I thought it would be fun to talk about. So anybody out there going, Mike Davis doesn't know what he's talking about, it's not a Lovecraftian work. Well, no, I'm not saying that, per se.
I gave up. But
that's a good point, Matt. A couple things come to mind, and I know Pete's going to have a lot of ideas, too. Well, this was one of my ideas, and Thomas Rowley on the message board just typed this. Consider Rorschach as a character who went deep into the underbelly of society, and it literally drove him insane. The idea that horror can do that to a person is pretty Lovecraftian.
Actually,
I don't know if I agree.
I don't agree.
I'm thinking about it too. Yeah, go ahead.
Rorschach could be the one sane man if you think about it.
Yes.
And the comedian.
Rorschach is the quintessential Lovecraftian investigator who has pieced together, uncorrelated contents and come to a horrific conclusion. And
I like that. So you see,
he's actually more Delta Green.
Say it again. Yeah, you could say that.
He kept his center.
Yeah.
It's like,
the fact that he's center of
a good person. He kept his moral center. He kept his sense of right and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Now that you say that, Pete, the other thing is he was a very asexual character. Rorschach was.
Yes.
It seemed repugnant to him. Sex.
Yeah. Well, giving his upbringing, that makes sense.
Well, yeah, he's got good reasons to feel that way. I understand it.
But and look, at this point, if you haven't read Watchmen, I'm sorry, we're gonna blow some stuff.
Yeah, I don't want to dance around it too much. I'd like to have a good discussion about it.
The thing that everybody points to at the end is the giant Lovecraftian monster that appears in New York and just kills everybody.
Yeah.
Which is, see, I see that more as from the Outer Limits, even though Moore acknowledged that later, but he said he really wasn't, because there's a plot line. It's one of the 2 Robert Culp episodes on the Outer Limits.
Right.
I think it's
Right.
called The Peacemakers.
Yeah, when you say that there's Lovecraftian
Pyramid.
themes in Watchmen, that might be the first thing that somebody comes up with, but I don't have that in mind at all, really.
And I agree with you. But what I think is that Ozymandias, who is manipulating all this,
Mm-hmm.
who creates the monster, because the monster is not real, it's fake. He's counting on the world interpreting this as an extra-dimensional, horrific attack. He's playing on that fear.
Right.
To bring everybody together.
Which is the plot line of Outer Limits, The Fear Makers.
Yes. Now, the funny thing is that the actual real Lovecraftian monster is Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Who is completely divorced from humanity and slowly losing any tie or memory of it.
Yeah, because Lovecraftian gods / monsters aren't really. It's not about good and evil. Never was to Lovecraft either. And he's not either. But when someone says to him that, when Rorschach says to Dr. Manhattan that the comedian died, Dr. Manhattan says something to the effect of, dead bodies and live bodies are pretty much the same to me. I'm paraphrasing, but
right.
He just doesn't care.
To me, that's less Lovecraft and more the pilot for the first episode of the Captain Kirk Star Trek.
The other thing is,
whatever it's when Kirk's friend becomes a superhero.
Oh, right.
Right, Gary.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
The other thing that goes on there is that Manhattan has a hard time dealing with time. Everything is happening to him at once.
Right.
And he doesn't seem to care. And Mike, you've talked about this before. It's almost as if he's a fourth-dimensional being intruding into our world. And the fact that he's deciding to play along with our timeline is just almost a game. It's not really that important to him.
Sorry,
I think that's where he came to, but not where he started from. I think he became gradually more inhuman.
And I agree.
Just like actually the comedian pointed out, geez, you're turning into a flake, God help us all.
Yeah.
I think that was true, that by the end he was like completely, he had no connection even to his longtime girlfriend,
Right.
No nothing.
And now that you bring up the comedian, if you want to talk about the guy who discovers the plot and goes insane, it's the comedian.
Right.
Those are some really good points, Pete. Go on, yeah.
And he just completely breaks down. He goes and sees his arch enemy and says, I thought I was the comedian, but this is a horrible joke. This is terrible. It's no joke I could ever pull off.
Yeah.
But somebody else.
I've killed kids in war. I've killed women and children, but this is way beyond. And he starts crying his eyes out on his enemy's bed. Yeah.
So this guy has lost it, and it's that that point in his life where Ozymandias decides he has to be eliminated because he just might blow it all, whether he's lucid or not. And that's sort of the last straw for Rorschach to start pushing all this stuff together.
Yeah, I was thinking about Lovecraftian themes for this show, and that's a major one that hadn't even occurred to me, that the whole plot, in a way, lays out as a Lovecraftian story where there's all these mysterious things going on, and it gets pieced together. You know, sort of like in Kolchak. They have been, they are, they will be storyline
Right.
that you mentioned.
Um,
Excuse me a second, my cat's going insane. I'll be right back.
right.
Curiously, you know, Rorschach was based on the Question.
The Question, right?
Charlton, who's now part of DC, and you know, when they did the Justice League Unlimited cartoon, they made the Question like Kolchak.
Right.
And even had somebody appear who they had a cameo, a sort of cartoon cameo by a Kolchak type character.
Right.
Where? I missed that part, sorry.
Justice League Unlimited.
When you had the paranoid Question who was...
Oh, the Question, yeah.
The Question was the basis for Rorschach. And I was saying this is after Watchmen, when they adopted the Question for cartoons, they made him a Kolchak X-Files type conspiracy theorist.
Right.
Yeah, good point. As a matter of fact, when Alan Moore was originally writing this, he was going to use the main DC characters.
Well, they were Charlton characters that
DC had just bought the rights to.
Oh, I thought he was going to use... what I read was he was going to use Superman, Batman, the Question, but they didn't want him to do it.
No, I heard the Question would have been Dr. Manhattan would have been Captain Atom. The girl whose name I forget would have been Nightshade.
Mm-hmm.
Silk Spectre.
Thunderbolt was Ozymandias.
No, Judo Master was Ozymandias.
Well, okay, I got that wrong now. I seem more like Thunderbolt.
Well, his personality's quite different, but Night Owl was obviously Batman, you know.
Night Owl was the Blue Beetle.
That does make more sense. That does make more sense, yeah.
The Owl ship is the Beetle ship.
Yeah, Archie ship, yeah.
And the comedian was a guy called the Peacemaker.
Right.
Huh. All right, so what about the comic within the comic, the Black Freighter? You remember that?
Yeah.
You know, that's just genius. That guy, Alan Moore, he's just a genius, you know.
Well, you know why it's a pirate comic, right?
Yeah, because there's no superhero comics in the world of Watchmen anymore.
Yeah.
No, that's what I'm not familiar with. Now, did that happen?
Well, Pete, why don't you can probably talk about it a little bit more intelligently than me, Pete.
Well, Rick, in the film, there's the newsstand, right?
Yeah.
Well, and there's the little black kid who's always reading comics. Well, and it's available on the DVD. The comic he's reading is called The Black Freighter, which is about a ship that's attacked by pirates, and everyone's killed except for one guy who ends up on a deserted island. But he knows that they're going to go and attack his hometown next. So he's desperate to get home, and he makes a raft out of the dead bodies of his fellow shipmates. And in the end, he's actually riding sharks back to the village.
Okay.
But by the time he gets back, he's so insane that he actually ends up killing his own wife.
Yeah, and he kills somebody to get a horse so he can race to save her.
Right.
You know, and it's I think it's supposed to mirror Veidt's, what's going on with Veidt.
Right.
And he may have gotten the idea. That sounds almost like a demented version of the origin of the first Phantom in Lee Falk's comic strip. You know, survivor of a pirate attack, father got killed.
Right.
Uses the skull of somebody. It's either his father's skull or it's a pirate skull, depending on which version of the Phantom's origin you read.
You know,
that's what that reminded me of.
I love having you guys on the show, all of you guys, for different reasons. And Pete and Rick, you know, sometimes I think about the show Angel, where what's her name goes down to the basement to talk to Files and Records, the Files and Records lady. She talks about how she knows everything. You know, she needs to know something. She just acts. I'm files and records. I know everything.
Well, my wife calls Rick Wikipedia.
Yeah. That's about right.
Yeah.
Well, just for older stuff. I'm not as good as on the modern stuff.
But
that's what we have Pete for.
Yeah.
The other thing that strikes me is that if you actually read the book and you go through the comics, what you discover is that I think half the world is run by Adrian Veidt, Ozymandias.
Yeah.
His logo or logos of his subsidiaries are everywhere. And he's essentially what every Bond villain dreams of. He is the corporation that is secretly manipulating everything behind the scenes.
And I think he's a fascinating character.
Right.
You know, this is a guy who's just so brilliant. That's his superpower. He's the smartest guy in the world.
Yeah.
He's like a variation on the current version of Lex Luthor when you describe him that way.
So is he a good guy?
He's amoral.
You think
he doesn't have any kind of sense of the value of human life.
Well, maybe. Look, let me take devil's advocate with that because
he doesn't value human life.
Well, let me. I don't necessarily disagree, but just as devil's advocate, he'd reply probably that it's about the greatest good for the greatest number of people, and that's what he's doing.
Well, I would say he represents what has been in literature the mad idealist.
Right. The guy who's willing to do whatever it takes to fulfill his ideal.
And this was a Jules Verne character originally, Robur. But if you ever saw Vincent Price in Master of the World, that's essentially that type of character.
Yeah, I'm kind of reminded of what is it? Dr. Horrible from Joss Whedon's Dr. Horrible. The world's a mess, and I just got to run it.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't see himself as a villain, or he's selfish.
Yeah.
He's doing it because he's doing it to save us from ourselves.
Right.
Well, and he does. I mean, it's very heavily implied that without his plan, without his interference, the world would have. I mean, we would have all gone under there would have been nuclear war, and just about everybody on the planet would be dead. Right. So, he stops that from happening. Of course, he kills several million people in the process, at least.
Right.
To get it done.
The problem with all of that, and this is where I have a concern, is that a lot of that is linchpin on the concept of Manhattan leaving.
Mm-hmm.
And Ozymandias engineers that.
Mm-hmm.
So if Manhattan doesn't leave, are we in such great danger?
He believes we are because he says that Dr. Manhattan can only stop about 99% of the bombs, but the 1% that's left would still kill everybody.
Right. And he also has a afraid that eventually, given what's happening to Manhattan, he will leave. So this is inevitable. But he may just, what's the Illuminati term for it that Shane Wilson came up with, Rick? Immanentizing the Eschaton? Accelerating the final event so that he can have more control over it.
But he's got to make him leave in such a way that the whole world thinks that Dr. Manhattan is a cop that's keeping an eye on them occasionally, so they better behave. Otherwise, he's going to come back and point his finger at a few more cities.
Right. Well, that's
and I got to say, as much as I like the comic version more, and I do love the movie, the ending in the movie was better done, in my opinion, than the comic book.
Well, it makes it so that Manhattan can't come back.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is important.
I don't know. I think the ambiguity of the comic is the way I interpreted it is he was already, you go back into like how he came into being, and then by the end of the story, he's completely indifferent. He's going to create his own world as a plaything.
Right.
He won't come back. It's like no interest. It's like, you know, I don't know. There's no good analogy. It's like you won't go back and pick up your old Play-Doh when you were a kid.
Yeah. Well, here's the question, and we'll get back to Lovecraftian themes. Well, I guess this is sort of in a way, but is it a false dichotomy? Was there only a choice between killing millions of people and killing everybody? You know what I mean? Because given that choice, you don't really have much of a choice. But if it's a false dichotomy, and there's actually a third choice or a fourth choice or a fifth choice, you know, then what he did was.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, it's not just that. It's a choice of preserving the status quo. Because in killing X millions of people in New York City, he's also, making sure that the civilization that you've created is the one that continues to go on. As opposed to if you had, to quote War Games, global thermonuclear war, another civilization might arise.
Around what year did Moore write this?
It's pre-85, I think. Let me check.
No, but I was saying it's before the fall of the Berlin Wall. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, but I'm saying it represents Cold War realities of the time.
Sure.
Oh
which ended in a way that none of us expected.
It's original copyright 1986.
So he was basically writing it in the early to mid 80s.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, in the real world, we were faced with that horrible status quo, and we may have a very different horrible status quo right now with terrorism.
Right.
But we managed to survive mutually assured destruction, at least so far.
Yeah.
At least that threat seems remote today.
Yeah. But the thing I think I'm getting at is that in saving the world, he makes sure that he maintains himself as the smartest and richest man in that world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I'm just spitballing here, but it's self-serving. It's very.
Well, he certainly got rid of his only competitor in any sense at all, which was Dr. Manhattan.
Right, and that's the other thing that people need to look at when they actually read the comic is there are no gas stations anymore.
Right, they're electric cars.
They're electric cars because Manhattan and Adrian Ozymandias have perfected lithium batteries.
Mm-hmm.
When Night Owl and Silk Spectre go to dinner, look in the background of the restaurant. There's turkeys with 4 legs.
Wow.
So,
and this isn't some alternate world thing. It's because of Dr. Manhattan. He manufactures the materials needed.
Right.
To do this.
And he sets people on new paths and gives them new ideas. He has accelerated the future.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Don Lee on the message board says, all that stuff with Dr. Manhattan talking about time from the outside is a lot like Russ Cole talking about time as a flat circle. What do you guys think?
Well, yeah, it's a perspective thing, and Rust is talking existentially. That things just keep repeating themselves. The difference is that Dr. Manhattan is actually seeing it. He's living it. And I'm not sure that he even sees time as a flat circle. He sees time as a single point that he might intrude on every now and then. We're going back to that, the whole 3 dimensions versus 4 dimensions thing.
And he sees himself and everybody else as puppets.
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to grasp because if he sees himself as if he sees everything that's going to happen, but he says he can't change it, you know.
Right.
And when he can't see the future for a brief period of time because of Veidt's scheme, he actually kind of likes it
Right.
because he doesn't like seeing four-dimensionally. Matt, if you're talking to us, you're muted. No, I don't think he is.
I think he's on the phone.
Oh, okay.
I think he got a telephone call.
Okay.
You know, one theme there, it's not so much in Lovecraft, but I've seen it in other mythos writers, and we even touched on it in the Eldritch Fourth.
Mm-hmm.
There's a theme in Lovecraftian fiction of man becoming what the great old ones.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mankind, in a way, Dr. Manhattan represents that.
Yes. Yes. Now, after saying that, Rick, I'm going to go back and say, and I talked earlier about how Ozymandias Adrian Veidt is the greatest cultist, right?
Yeah.
But is he also possibly our greatest savior? Has he recognized what Dr. Manhattan is becoming and engineered a way to avoid it?
Yeah, maybe get him off the earth and leave us alone.
Yeah.
Because the way you could view it there is that somebody's going to take over. It's either going to be Manhattan or Ozymandias, and Manhattan would at least would maybe not be hostile, but be so totally indifferent he wouldn't mind people dying.
Right.
Might be more like the ally in Paul Wilson's, you know.
Right.
Jackson stories. Totally indifferent.
In the middle of the book, there. I don't remember if this. Oh, this following is reprinted from Chapter 5 of the Treasure Island Treasury of Comics. Flint Editions, New York, 1984. I assume those are comics within the world of the Watchmen. But I thought this was kind of interesting, where they're talking about the Black Freighter and talking about the writers of the Black Freighter. Problems set in for the book around issue 25 when Shea began his controversial run of issues based around the contents of plundered books in the library of the freighter's captain, including banned tomes supposedly originally headed for eternal suppression within the vaults of Vatican City when they were stolen en route by the pirates. You know, banned tomes, that's pretty damn Lovecraftian.
Right.
And it's just this little nugget that doesn't have anything to do with the story.
In fact, this was really the catalog of probably everything that was in that pirate ship.
Yeah, probably so. So any more? What about Watchmen? Any more themes I'm missing? We want to talk about Neonomicon or Alan Moore some more?
Let me think for a second. Hidden races. There's no hidden races. Ancient cities. Well, you know, and then a minor thing, but you know, Veidt's impregnable fortress is in Antarctica.
Yeah.
You know.
But isn't that more in the tradition of Superman's Fortress of Solitude and Doc Savage's Fortress of Solitude, which are
sure
in the Arctic, so we just move it to the Antarctic, you know?
Sure. We can. I'll buy that as an alternate explanation.
However you want to look at it, it's a damn cool hideout. It's a damn cool lair. That's a better word.
Yeah. Now, you know, the other thing that scares me, and we haven't touched on this, is in the. I don't think you mentioned it in the. I guess it's in the movie, but in the book, there are other people who know what's going on, and there are other scientists who've worked on everything.
Oh yeah, basically his employees though.
Yeah, and they're all in Antarctica, and he kills them all.
Yeah, that it is in the movie. I remember a scene like that in the movie.
He kills them all, and
Yeah, and not because any of them said, that's a really good point, because he doesn't kill him because one of them goes, well, you know what, we're going to talk about this.
No, there's
No,
always the
nobody says anything like that. He kills him on the remote possibility that they may talk.
Right, right.
And in a way that makes him really evil, because if you look at the other great mad idealists from popular culture, Fu Manchu and Ra's al Ghul, to name two, they wouldn't do that.
No. No.
They would be loyal to the people as long as the people are loyal to them.
Right.
Kill somebody they think might be capable of betraying them, but if the person shows no sign of it,
right,
they're going to wipe them out.
Well, as an aside, I think I've said this once before, but I question whether Adrian Veidt was actually the smartest man in the world, because Night Owl and Rorschach break into his office, and Night Owl's sitting at his computer and guesses his password.
Right.
Which is Ramses 2.
Right.
And I'm thinking, you know, my passwords are randomly generated letters and numbers and symbols. You know, in other words, nobody is going to guess Mike Davis's password to anything because, oh, it's Logan, you know, or Danielle or anything like that. You know, it seems like to me the smartest guy in the world would do something like that. Well, you wouldn't be able to guess his password.
That may be reflective of the 80s culture, where we all had simplified passwords back then.
Right.
Yeah, I know. It's really not a fair observation, but I'm just throwing it in there.
No, but I mean, like, you've seen that on, you know, it was like on the horrible Batman and Robin movies, you know, guessing Alfred's password. And I can think of a lot of TV shows where people were guessing people's passwords.
Yeah. You know, it could have just been as easily been no password on the computer. It would have made more sense, because his office is probably not that easy to get into. You know.
The other thing that plays in here is the complete random chance of the story actually coming out.
Oh yeah, talk about that, because I was never sure if it really did.
Well, I think what we're supposedly reading is Rorschach's journal.
Are we? Because there's some notes from the doctor in here and other perspectives.
I think there is, but I think what we're reading is what, you know, I guess, is his name Wally at the end? I have to check.
I will look right now.
Well, the guy in the newspaper gets a notebook at the end of the movie.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know his name, but
Seymour.
You know, this is what you're talking about here.
Yeah, his name is Seymour. You know,
Seymour. Yeah.
He's reaching for something from the slush pile.
Yeah, right here. That's what he's reaching for.
And it happens to be Rorschach's journal is right there staring us at the face. And
sure. So, yeah, go ahead.
The possibility, essentially, it's just like there's a random chance that we'll find this out. You know, and it all comes down to Seymour surviving, the New Statesman surviving as a publication arm, and Rorschach happened to be, you know, dropping the journal off before they take their final flight to Antarctica. So yeah, there's some of it that just can't possibly have been put together just through your Rorschach's journal, but enough of it could be there to force Night Owl and Silk Spectre and a few other people to talk and do the research.
There's a couple of good points on the message board I want to read about Watchmen. First one is from Ivan Shablatsky. Dr. Manhattan may be a cold, disconnected being with powers and perception that make humans effectively irrelevant, but he never took actions that he knew would lead to multiple people dying, and his intentional murder of Rorschach shows that he still had an interest in seeing humanity flourish. Ergo, I say he is not like a god. I say him Lovecraftian god. Or a great old one. Yeah, that's what he's saying. G-O-O. Of course, he has killed several people, you know, when he teleports them and they have heart attacks, and he's not concerned at all.
But he kills in Vietnam.
Yeah.
With a blink of an eye.
Mm-hmm.
But and Ivan's right. But the other thing is that we often think of the great old ones as antagonistic to humans.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, that's a writer's perspective, and what I've often done in my fiction is make them the complete opposite. Just as the universe is indifferent, so are the great old ones. And if Cthulhu wakes up, he just walks away.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. One way to put it is, are humans ants or are they cattle?
Right. And a lot of authors, to go for that horror, treat humans as cattle.
Right.
To me, it's often, it will vary from old one to old one, but when it comes to the big guys, why even bother? They just walk away, and I think that's where Manhattan is.
Which makes me think of to me, I think of this scene here with the doctor after
Right.
Rorschach basically takes this nice guy, the psychiatrist, and his perspective changes. Let's put it that way. Can't talk today. So this is an evening after he's at home. He's talked to Rorschach for the third or fourth or fifth time. I sat on the bed. I looked at the Rorschach blot that he showed Walter Kovac's Rorschach. I tried to pretend it looked like a spreading tree, shadows pulled beneath, but it didn't. It looked more like a dead cat I once found, the fat, glistening grubs writhing blindly, squirming over each other, frantically tunneling away from the light. But even that is avoiding the real horror. The horror is this. In the end, it is simply a picture of empty, meaningless blackness. We are alone. There is nothing else.
Well, there's your Russ Cole moment, right?
Yeah, there's your real horror.
And, that's, as we've discussed previously, Rorschach is not insane. He's the most sane person there is. But in this case, that sanity is infectious. The fact that it leads to the conclusion that the universe is a horrible place is just...
Yeah, and basically he's like, if you don't feel the way that I feel, then your experience isn't broad enough.
Right.
Which I can certainly relate to. You know.
And the problem that happens with the psychologist, I can't remember but is that he slowly becomes to understand Rorschach and believe in him.
Mm-hmm.
And realize how horrible things are. Now, all of that goes to hell in a handbasket when the monster comes and you see that psychiatrist sheltering the boy who's reading the comic books in the lee of the newsstand.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about that. One thing. This as an aside, I really like this right before what I read. He's just had an argument with his wife. Why do we argue? Life is so fragile, a successful virus clinging to a speck of mud, suspended in endless nothing. Next week, I could be putting her in a garbage sack, placing her outside for collection. He's talking about if there's nuclear war. Life is too short to... that's sort of one of my main philosophies, is that life can be very, very horrible, and life is too short. And so what can make it better is treating each other with kindness. As hokey as that may sound, it's important.
Yeah.
Okay, so Thomas Rowley, here's another point, says on the message board, how about, speaking of Lovecraftian themes, how about the fact that Ozymandias was a pharaoh and obsessed with Egyptology? He was Nyarlathotep, using technology to destroy people to bring his own world.
Good point.
Yeah, very good point. All right, anything else on Watchmen?
I like that. No, I'm still riffing off that.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, because Nyarlathotep is supposed to be the messenger, bringing back Cthulhu. And
wow, that is, yeah.
It's his own version, but yeah.
Awesome, Thomas.
Yeah, I like that.
Or bringing back Athersoth.
Or Azathoth, but yeah.
Which would be he's sort of the because Nyarlathotep is associated with nuclear destruction.
Right. Through Azathoth, but yeah.
And also, Robert Bloch's Shadow from the Steeple.
Right.
It goes back to Lovecraft's poem, blowing off the ashes of the world as it's destroyed, or whatever the line was. Right. I can't remember it exactly.
But he
guy from Yoga.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the thing is, it's not the PC thing to say, but the thing is, Adrian Veidt really is superior to everybody else. You know? He is. That doesn't make him better. It doesn't make him moral. But he's obviously superior. So, No,
but Adrian would argue that exactly for those reasons, because he does not have a moral center, he is superior. He's willing, capable, and will do whatever it takes to preserve the world. Doesn't matter how many people get in the way and have to be killed to do it.
Yeah, well, I was thinking he's superior because he's so supremely intelligent.
What wasn't that theme done earlier by Marvel in their Squadron Supreme comics, where they had a alternate universe where they had Squadron Supreme was essentially Marvel's Justice League.
Right. I do remember that. Who did that? Was that Nighthawk?
Yeah, I mean, Nighthawk was one of the characters. He was the Batman.
Yeah.
And Dr. Prism was Green Lantern, and there were all these characters who corresponded to Justice League.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that was done too.
The premise there was it wasn't the nuclear war. It was more they were borrowing a lot from Doc Savage pulp magazines, and that the superheroes had found a way to adjust everybody's behaviors, to brainwash people, to make them good. And that was the whole debate, and it was turning out the Superman analog, whose name I don't remember right now.
Hyperion.
Yeah.
God, how do I know? Yeah, I read the 12-issue series. I remember that.
Hyperion. Yeah, that was his name. Yeah. Hyperion wanted to rule the world and be benign and brainwash everybody to be good. So nobody goes to prison. They just get their personality adjusted.
Right.
And the Batman analog, Nighthawk, freaked out and essentially teamed up with his enemies, one of whom was a Catwoman analog, to bring this whole society down, because he sort of was the wrong way to go.
Yeah.
Well, you know what else this reminds me of is, again, to bring up Angel, the season 4.
You're geeking out, Mike.
I know. What the hell was her name?
Chick?
You mean that goddess?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Cordelia, and then she gave birth to
Jasmine.
Jasmine, yes.
Jasmine. So Jasmine, would have us believe that she did all this to save the world, and of course she eats people, but she eats a couple dozen a day, and she's saving billions.
Right.
There's just a bit of a parallel there with her and Veidt. So
well, that reminds me of the old argument from the movie version of Goldfinger, where Goldfinger goes, more people die in traffic accidents in the United States than I'm going to kill.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not doing anything about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there good people in Watchmen as far as main characters? I think Night Owl is a pretty good person.
It's funny, there's that scene at the beginning where Rorschach is finished with Night Owl the first time, and he's talking about how it left a bad taste in his mouth.
Yeah.
And he says, he's soft, neurotic. It's amazing how many of us are mentally, disturbed.
Yeah, not thinking that maybe he is.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I think Night Owl is probably the closest thing we have to an everyman. He did it. He went out and became a superhero for a while, mostly because he was bored.
Mm-hmm.
He was a rich kid dilettante, from what I can read. And he picked up on somebody else's costume, and he's Night Owl too. The first one's retired, and he doesn't.
Yeah, but he wasn't. He wasn't like the son of the owner in a lot of businesses that acts like a jerk. He actually became very good at it, better than the first Night Owl, and he actually did care about people.
Right, but then when the Keene Act comes along and makes superheroing illegal, he's like, okay, well, I'm done, because he, as much as he's the Batman analog, he's really the Blue Beetle analog. He's well off, but he's not Batman smart. He's not Batman strong. He's not Adrian Veidt rich. He's going to get caught, and he knows this. And when the cops show up to deal with the fact that his door's been broken down by Rorschach, they kind of know who he is.
Yeah, not in the movie, but in the book.
Yeah, they know that he is the Night Owl.
Yeah, he is kind of an everyman. He makes it. I'm trying to find it, but he makes a statement to Rorschach when they are coming up to Veidt's Arctic fortress. I can't find it, but so I'm gonna have to paraphrase. But he says something to the effect of how nervous he is, because, and then he says something like, "Do you suppose this is how normal people feel about us? You and me." As the feelings he has for Ozymandias.
Right.
And
then then there's this little bit where they're actually landing, and Night Owl puts on his snowsuit, and he's like, "Oh, here's one for you too, Rorschach." And Rorschach's like, "I don't need it," because Rorschach's not human, as he is, but in Rorschach's mind, he doesn't need a snowsuit in Antarctic weather.
Yeah, when he's talking to the psychiatrist, he said, "When I first put on the costume, I wasn't Rorschach. I was Walter Kovacs in Rorschach's mask."
Right.
And he talks about the horrific thing that happened that turned him into Rorschach, and it's so well written. He goes, says something to the effect of, "Walter Kovacs closed his eyes when he opened them again, but it was Rorschach who opened his eyes."
Right.
So. Yeah, I always wondered what the point was of him saying, "No, I don't need a coat," when he's obviously, you do need a coat, man. It's the Arctic.
No, he doesn't, because he doesn't see himself that way. When his face is taken off, when his mask is taken off, he's begging for his face.
Yeah. Oh, here it is. Rorschach says, "Nervous," and Night Owl says, "Well, my stomach feels weird and my balls are all shriveled up, so I guess nervous will do. This must be how ordinary people feel. This must be how ordinary people feel around us." Yeah,
which leads me to another. I'm gonna jump to another comic, but there's that whole time when there's this, and I forget what book it's from, but Batman and Superman are talking, and Batman turns away in the middle of the conversation, and when he looks back, Superman's gone. And he says, "Oh, so that's how that
feels."
I think that happened.
You can bring up Batman Superman anytime.
I think that happened on one of the Batman cartoons.
Okay.
But I don't think it was with Superman, but I seem to remember that as well.
Yeah. Because he's constantly doing it to Gordon and other people.
Right, yes.
Danielle showed me something on Pinterest earlier today where Batman and Superman are texting to each other, and this is on Man of Steel, and Superman goes, "Hey, I hear we're teaming up," and Batman goes, "Yeah, but let's meet in Gotham. You don't have a good track record. You destroyed all those buildings and everything." He goes, "Man, that was my first time out." And he goes, "We're meeting in Gotham."
Well, did you see?
Or no, don't meet in Gotham. We'll meet in Metropolis. Don't come to Gotham.
Yeah.
There
were these series of animated cartoons and how movies should have ended.
Oh yeah.
I remember something that's one how Godzilla should have ended. And, it has Godzilla getting up and everybody's cheering him like as they did at the end of the movie. And Superman is watching this on television going, "Oh, he gets the cheers. I do a better job, and everybody says I'm lousy."
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the public, the people that said that, it's interesting. If it was another superhero, I don't think it would have been said as much. But it's Superman. He's perfect. You don't give him any room for mistakes.
Right, well, and that's the whole backstory for Kingdom Come. Is that when the Joker kills Lois Lane, Superman can't bring himself to kill the Joker.
Right.
And somebody else does it for him. And then Superman retires. And then while Superman is retired, the world goes to a hell in a handbasket.
Which is the complete opposite of the current Gods Among Us.
Is it?
Can't remember the whole title, but the Joker kills Lois Lane and bombs all of Metropolis. So this is a Elseworld story, essentially, but Superman does kill the Joker, and then he takes over the world. So it's a complete opposite of what he did in Kingdom Come.
They had that on the Superman animated. It was alternate universe where Lois Lane got killed and Superman and Lex Luthor teamed up to rule the world.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so getting back to Alan Moore and Lovecraft. This, Alan Moore, I was reading an interview where he said this is a horrible book, and he wrote it. Matt had some kind of crisis at home. That's why he had to leave. He wrote. But, yeah, he was talking about the rape scene in here and that it's written it's drawn very titillating and everything, and I agree. It could have been done better.
We're talking about a woman getting raped by a deep one, essentially.
Yeah.
That is always, I think, a problem when you do rape in movies or graphic novels or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I think you really have to do is shut the door and not see what's going on.
Yeah.
I've seen too many things where people have goofed it up. Once Upon a Time Once Upon a Time in America by Sergio Leone is an example. It just doesn't get filmed right.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a better way to do it. But at the end where she's talking to this prisoner guy, it's been like a year or two since I've read this, so I can't exactly remember who this guy is. But they're talking, and she goes, human beings aren't where they think they are. They aren't even what they think they are. And she asks him, where are we really? I get a sense that it's somewhere high and cold. And he answers, Ling, we're all on Ling. And it shows, something like that. I'd like to talk about that for a little bit, because that's the most interesting thing in the book to me.
He's the previous investigator, if I remember correctly.
Right. He's from the court.
Oh, right. Ling, I've heard of that. It's from Lovecraft, right? It's a plateau or something. You're right. You're absolutely right, he says. But this plateau, it's not high ground in the normal sense. It's actually projecting up into a higher mathematical space. I'm so glad you see it, too. She replies, I think I'm coming to see it more every day. I see it in my dreams. To me, that's the most interesting thing in the book, so I'd like to talk about that a little bit. What are you guys' thoughts on that? I mean, so we're not, in this version of reality, we're not really here. Is that what Alan Moore is saying?
That sounds like Ramsey Campbell's Render of the Veils, almost.
Yeah.
I don't think I've read that one.
That's where there's a great old one going to show you that you're living in a false reality. that we really look like horrible Lovecraftian monsters, not the way we think we look.
Okay. Well, it took me by surprise when I read it, and I thought it was really, really interesting.
Well, I think I'm going to fall back to Flatland, Mike.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
You know, essentially the way I read this is that the universe is Flatland. Lang is a projection that moves up out of that into 3 dimensions, possibly artificially, you know, in terms of a higher mathematical, you know, space. And yeah, I'm spitballing here, but
well, no, and we talked about Flatland before. It's been so long ago, and we got a lot more viewers now that I think it's worth bringing up again. You know, if you haven't read, talking to the audience, if you haven't read Flatland, it's definitely worth picking up. But you know, in Flatland, I believe the 2-dimensional creatures are visited by, is it a triangle or is it a square from the 3rd dimension?
I can't remember. I think it's a square.
Yeah. Okay, but go ahead, Rick.
I haven't read it, but the author is that Stapleton?
No, I don't think so.
No, I'm saying who wrote it?
Let me look it up.
Edward Abbott, I think.
Yeah, that's it. That's
okay.
it. Let's see here. Let me refresh my memory, and it's been a while since I read it. Pull up the Wikipedia entry. The story describes a 2-dimensional world occupied by geometric figures. Women are simple line segments, men are polygons with various numbers of sides. The narrator is a square. The square dreams about a visit to a 1-dimensional world, Lineland, and attempts to convince the realm's monarch of a 2nd dimension, but is unable to do so. This is the interesting part, he is himself visited by a 3-dimensional sphere. So in other words, a sphere from the 3rd dimension visits the 2nd dimension, and this is my point. Of course, there's no way he looks like a sphere to anybody in the 2nd dimension.
Right.
So, I mean, because they can only see at any time 2 dimensions of this 3-dimensional creature. All right, so getting back to Lovecraft, Lovecraftian monsters and gods, you know, why are they ugly? Why are they so repugnant? Well, maybe one reason is, you know, in some stories it could be because they're beings from higher dimensions, and that's we can only see how they're represented in this reality in 3 dimensions.
And that's a segue into what I think is the best artwork in the book.
In
yeah.
Neonomicon?
Yeah. All the Lovecraftian gods laid out.
Oh,
now, if you have this section, I cannot figure out who the one-eyed creature is.
Well, hold it up again.
Corner. Everything else I knew.
Will you hold it up again?
Okay, I'll show you that. In that part where you see the guy with hands, with a human body and hands, mouth. That's like on a Golak from Ramsey Campbell.
Right.
Yeah.
One up next to him on the corner of on the border of the book is a green skinned, one-eyed creature.
Right.
I can't think of anybody in the mythos who has one eye.
Dagon.
Oh, I thought Dagon had 2.
I think Dagon only has 1. I'd have to go back and check.
Some story. I mean, at least in I always view him as a regular deep one, unless maybe that Eddie Burton character had, you know, that one who's a fanzine named after.
Right. I'll go back and check, but yeah, I think it's.
Well, it also depends on which author, you know,
right,
wrote it.
It could also be. Isn't the thing in the story where the baby washes up on the beach and they put it on display? Isn't that only one-eyed? It's a giant Leviathan thing.
What book or anthology was that in? Because I'm not remembering.
I think it's a Sonia Green story. that Lovecraft Ghost wrote.
Oh yes, Horror at Martin's Beach.
The Horror at Martin's Beach, yes.
It is one-eyed and it's aquatic. That could very well be it. I think you got it.
Well, okay. Thomas Rayleigh again says the three-lobed burning eye, Haunter of the Dark.
Yeah, but it only has 2 lobes.
Yeah. I didn't look at it close enough.
Yeah, well, the character who I was fascinated in this, and this is violating Joe Pulver's rules, was I think his name was Johnny Carcosa.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
He had an interest. The drug dealer was wearing a pallid mask over the side of his face, and I thought he was a superbly realized character, visually and dialogue-wise and everything. Good villain, if he is a villain.
Yeah.
Well, Neonomicon is just one of those books. It's well written that I feel like I need to take a shower when I'm done reading it.
Yeah. It's heavy into sex, so it's not for everybody's taste.
No, it's not.
And I mean, it's heavy. It's if this was a movie, it'd be X-rated.
Oh yeah.
For violence and sex. I mean, it wouldn't be R-rated. This would be an X.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, do you guys have all the artwork that's in the back?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, right. That's some good stuff. That's some very good stuff. Let me hold up a little bit of it. Well, here's the first one.
Right.
Yeah, Cthulhu in all his glory.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, here's another one. I won't do them all, but
that's
move that up a little, Mike.
Okay.
But I want to mention here that these are Darkspawn of Shub-Niggurath, and these are Chaosium's version essentially.
Oh, really?
That has, when Block originally writes,
Notebook Found in a Deserted House.
Yes. They're Shoggoths.
Right, but they're different from the Shoggoths that were in at the Mountains of Madness.
Right. And now this has become essentially the Dark Young of Shub-Niggurath.
Right. In fact, we didn't mention that Cthulhu Wars is now being delivered to several of us.
Yeah, mine might be next door. I gotta check.
You get 3 of these creatures. In the big group, they're fairly large.
To talk with Sandy Peterson one-on-one with Cthulhu Wars, is quite an experience because he's so excited about this game.
I just thrilled when I opened mine, and you look at those figures and you're always going to find some little interesting detail.
Yeah.
For instance, if you look at Nyarlathotep, look at his behind. That's all I'm going to say. You see true cosmic obscenity. I'll put it that way.
Well, Sandy Peterson just sent me an email. Saturday, April the 4th, Cthulhu Wars release party here in Texas. For those that don't know, I don't live too far from Sandy, about 45 minutes, and we're friends. So I'm really looking forward to that. He's invited a bunch of people, and he says if you're on the list I mailed this to, you can get free food and drink. If you're not on the list, bring your Cthulhu Wars proof of purchase token, and you'll get free food and drink anyway. So anybody wants to take a trip to Coppell, Texas on April the 4th, I guess I'm allowed to forward you this email. So, but that should be something. I'm going to film, as long as they let me, which I don't see why they wouldn't. I'm going to film some of that for the Lovecraft EZine readers slash viewers, because I think they'd love it. So anyway, there's that. What do you guys read lately? I just finished reading.
Hold on, Mike. Before we leave Alan Moore, also this, which these are Yuggoth cultures and other growths.
Oh yeah.
Alan Moore's collection of. It's not just Lovecraftian. But it's short. It's horrific short stories illustrated. A bunch of them are Lovecraftian.
Yeah, I don't have that. I wish I did.
Yeah, you gotta buy that one.
Yeah. I don't know that you can get this anymore.
Oh, okay.
Oh, really?
But
we'll find out the hard way.
Yeah.
At least not without shedding blood, right?
The comics are actually cheaper to buy individually than the whole book.
That's
I had
reverse of what's
getting
usually true.
I have a few of those comics, but I just had problems being in my comic book store when they got delivered.
Ah.
Anyway, I just finished reading The Dunfield Terror by William Meikle. It's an advanced review copy. It doesn't come out until April, but I really enjoyed it. So
I hear it's good.
yeah. So that's what I just finished reading. What about you guys?
I am in the middle of reading Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yeah, I hear it's good.
Yeah, I hear it's good too. No, I've read it before, but I have been asked to write another Jekyll and Hyde story.
Is that going to be for that anthology you can manage to get invited to?
Yes.
Yes. Good.
So I am going back and rereading that.
Well,
the thing about
anthologies. Go ahead, Rick.
I was going to say the thing about Mr. Hyde is that he looks like a troglodyte in
right.
In the story. He doesn't. I mean, he does have an ape-like appearance at times, but I mean, he's not this huge, bulky guy that was in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen since Ron Alan Moore, or the villain who calls himself Mr. Hyde in Marvel.
Yeah.
Who is now on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but we haven't seen him. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot you hadn't seen it.
I finished season 1.
I'm sorry. I ruined that for you.
That's okay.
I was thinking I should say it now because they revealed it, very early on.
That's okay.
My apologies.
That's all right.
For everybody watching, if you're a writer or author or beginning writer, and I assume you're interested in Lovecraftian stuff, or that's why you're watching this show. But I just created a permanent page at the website. At the top of any page, that menu at the top, it's the last one, calls for submissions. And it's meant to be a permanent current list of Lovecraftian and weird fiction anthologies that are looking for stories. We got 7 there right now. So this is interesting. Neil Baker, who published The Dark Rites of Cthulhu. Baker, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which you were in, weren't you, Pete?
Yes.
Well, he's doing Bond Unknown. James Bond, an upcoming anthology where James Bond and the Lovecraft mythos coexist. What do you guys think about that?
Does he have licensing for it?
No. Here's what's happened is that James Bond has gone out of copyright in Canada. And his publishing house is in Canada. So is EZine. I think it's called EZine, and they're going to do one as well. I think called Bond Unbound.
Oh, really? They should email me.
Maybe Bond Unlicensed.
I've got to go in. License to Kill. I bet no one's ever thought about that.
Yeah, it's an interesting place to go.
I've read. No, there was a disguised Bond Lovecraft crossover called Dr. Dexter, which I think Llewellyn Cabos wrote it. I may be wrong.
I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And it was a sequel to Robert Bloch's Shadow from the Steeple, where Nyarlathotep, Dr. Dexter, was planning to destroy the world, and he gets stopped by a character who's called John Blake, but he's clearly James Bond.
Right.
Well, I was very surprised when I saw this.
Yeah.
I haven't even processed it enough to think of whether that's something I would be interested in reading. I mean, I guess I would. I'm not huge on James Bond, but if you have some well-written stories.
I mean, ultimately, Dr. No makes a great mythos villain.
The issue, though, is, and I say this anytime you take a major hero and put him up against the mythos, it's going to radically change that character's life.
Right.
Yeah.
You're not going to, that's why we've always had this debate about whether, if you know the hero Doc Savage, in the last novel, he ended up apparently fighting things from hell. And there's going to be a sort of disguised sequel to that story where they'll turn out to be mythos-like monsters.
Well, I don't see it as a problem, and the reason is because it's not canon, basically. Any story about James Bond and the mythos isn't going to be canon.
Oh, I'm not worried about that. I'm just saying from an artistic point of view. This was the problem I had with most of the Holmes stories. If they get too deeply involved with the mythos, it's not, like, let me put it this way. If you go into the New York subways and you fight ghouls, that anybody could do that, and you wouldn't be worried about the great old ones rising up. But if Bond ends up on Raye, that's going to change your whole perspective on life.
Well, and he might see his current job as maybe a little less important than what he could be fighting.
Yeah.
Well, he certainly wouldn't be the carefree guy that he is sometimes portrayed as. Not lately.
I do like Alan Moore's take on James Bond, which is was in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen Black Dossier.
But he got rid of Dr. No as a storyline. It was all a cover story. If you read the comic, you know that. Yes,
and he ends up killing Bulldog Drummond.
That I didn't mind so much. Being an expert on Bulldog Drummond.
So I was surprised to see that. We've got Cthulhu Fhtagn, Ross Lockhart, editor of the Book of Cthulhu 1 and 2, Tales of Jack the Ripper, and the Children of Old Leech. Cthulhu Fhtagn is coming August 5th, 2015 from Word Horde. I've got the deadlines here and links where links exist, which is most of them. Let's see here. Anything else? Dreams from the Witch House is all-female voices of Lovecraftian horror.
Right.
Swords versus Cthulhu. Molly Tanzer and Jesse Bullington is editing that.
Yeah, I just finished my first draft. I'm co-authoring, trying to co-author a story for that with somebody. I finished my first draft and sent it off to my co-author.
Is that a sort of sword and sorcery Cthulhu?
It is. It is.
As you might have guessed from the title, this project is a spiritual successor to our previous Shotguns versus Cthulhu. But while Shotguns featured mostly modern or futuristic settings for its action-heavy eldritch tales, this tome will collect stories of a historical or fantastical bent. And then you got Tomorrow's Cthulhu, and then Weird Wild West. So, so there's more stuff coming up, and there's definitely places besides Lovecraft EZine. If you're upset because I'm not taking submissions at the moment, there's other places to submit.
What?
So yeah.
I got 5 stories to send you.
No, actually, my rule is if I've previously published you, then you're allowed to send me something whether I'm taking submissions or not, or if I know you, I guess. But as far as the general, just taking submissions, having the slush pile open, not right now. So.
Which I think is wise for you to shut down sometimes.
Yeah, so I don't get too far behind. And so I'm just trying to help get the word out for other anthologies.
Yeah. There's a few more. Was it post-Cthulhu?
If there is, I hope that somebody emails me with the information. Go ahead.
I think there's post-Cthulhu.
Post-Cthulhu, okay.
A post-human Cthulhu anthology.
So it's after the apocalypse, more or less.
It doesn't have to be, but it's sort
After
of
the singularity.
It's sort of more along the lines of how do humans evolve with Lovecraftian monsters.
Okay.
Very, maybe cyberpunkish is more the way to think of it.
Yeah, I just Googled it and I don't see it, but
I'll find you the link and send it to you.
So
that'd be great.
A little like a future Cthulhu's type.
Yeah. There's also The Fall of Cthulhu, which is a title that's been used before.
In comics.
Right. This is a anthology of why didn't Cthulhu or anybody else destroy us. Give us stories why they failed.
Yeah, the only thing coming up on that is the comic as well.
Yeah, I'll send you these links. There's a what is it called? Non-Binary Review is doing an issue of King and Yellow stories.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I don't want to just post Lovecraftian stuff because also weird fiction anthologies coming up.
I'll send you a whole bunch of links tonight if I can remember.
Okay.
If my wife doesn't beat me.
So then you won't be.
One thing for a themed anthology, or that's lovely. For a themed anthology or issue, is we celebrate Chambers. We may not use Lovecraft in it, but it's his influence on Lovecraftian writers. It really would be nice if there was an anthology celebrating Arthur Machen.
There was supposedly a Arthur Machen themed anthology that was to be released at the last British Fantasy meeting or Society convention last year.
I thought somebody was doing that. No, that's Robert Aikman, and that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, that's Aikman. But yeah, I think there was a Arthur Machen anthology.
Well, it's funny that you bring up Machen because I don't know how it got past me, but I've never read it, and I just started reading the novel of the Black Seal by Arthur Machen, and I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
You can read it for free online. I got a free Kindle version, put it on my Kindle, which is easier, but if you don't have a Kindle, you can read it for free online.
It's really a novelette rather than a novel.
Yeah, it's not too big.
And besides being an influence on Whisper in the Darkness, it's a heavy influence on Robert E. Howard. Worms of the Earth, probably his best story, is heavily influenced by Machen. The creatures in that are essentially the creatures in the novel of the Black Seal. Because Machen has a whole series of stories. The Shining Pyramid is one, the Red Hand is another. I just noticed because I was writing an article.
Okay.
That's why the Terranians is the other, Out of the Earth.
You're writing a Machen article or something?
I'm doing something with Val Robert the article is actually about a writer named Jack Mann. Are you familiar with him?
No.
No.
Okay. He wrote an occult detective series in the 1930s called Geese. And he wrote a novel called Maker of the Shadows, which is essentially a secret sequel to Worms of the Earth by Howard. That story had been published in England in 1933 or 34. And he utilized Mackin. I mean, that was a very Mackin-esque story by Howard, so there's a lot of Mackin in both in this secret sequel as well. So I had to go into like the whole mythology of Mackin, how it influenced Howard, what Mann took from it, and so forth.
Oh, well, if you ever want to write an Arthur Mackin article for me for the
I'm writing this for the news group, for a news group, and after it gets published, it may end up being submitted to you.
Well, that'd be great.
Rick, did you ever write up that French Leech article?
Yeah. Mike's published it.
Okay. I just haven't read the latest issue.
No, it's not. These articles aren't put in the issues. They're in the blog of the website.
Okay. All right.
If you go to the webpage, he's got it there. I just saw it. I was looking. I was trying to find the guest list, and I actually had to go to my email, but he had it listed there.
All right.
Yeah. If you can search for anything on the website, the bottom right side, not all the way to the bottom, but the right side of any page, right side of any page, there's a search box. So. Anyway, I just started reading that, and really liking it. So, I was going to ask something else before we left, but can't think of what it was. It's not been too important. Oh, yeah, it was important. Giveaway. Okay, so I'm going to do the... What?
How do we do this?
Well, I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to do the giveaway on Wednesday, and I'm going to use random.org to do it, as usual, but since we're giving away more than one title, let's do this. Send me an email between now and Wednesday. Anybody watching this, Wednesday morning probably be the latest that I'd want any emails. And in the subject, put, what shall we put? Put Sunday chat contest. Let's do that. Sunday chat contest. And in the body of the email, if you'd indicate to me if random.org picks you, which of the books that you want. We've got 2 print copies of The Sea of Ash. Pete's flexible with either Reanimators or The Weird Company. Those are print. And then we've got Kindle copies. 1 Kindle copy of Blood Will Have Its Season. 1 Kindle copy of Rick's book that I keep forgetting the title of.
Secret History of Daring Adventurers.
Yeah, Daring Adventures. So 6 books in all. So if you have a preference, indicate that to me, but I will not promise if you win that you'll actually get that book. I just promise to try. So it just depends on how it all shakes out. So send the email to Lovecraft EZine, Lovecraft EZine @gmail.com, and put Sunday chat contest in the subject, and if you have a preference, indicate that to me. And if you're in the body of the email, if you're enjoying the chat, tell me that as well. So it's always nice to hear the chats. So, okay, anything else, guys? You beat that Watchmen dead horse enough?
Well, I think it was a good conversation.
Yeah, I think it was fun.
Yeah, I think we've beaten the Watchmen to death.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Rick. If you've just seen the movie, it's definitely worth picking up the comic.
Well, it's a pity Matt had to go because he sent me as a gift a Kindle edition of The Watchmen.
Oh, he did.
I'm going to publicly thank him. I thanked him in a private email. That's why if you saw me typing a little before at one point, while we were talking, I was thanking Matt.
Matt's a nice guy. Yeah. I mentioned one time on this show a couple months ago that I really wanted the Vandermeer's Weird collection, or anthology.
Yeah.
I forget what it's titled. I'm sorry. and he sent me a Kindle copy. So yeah, it sounds just like him.
Before I forget, not that it's a huge Lovecraftian book, but Jess Nevin's Encyclopedia of Fantastic Victoriana, which Rick will know.
Yes, excellent book.
Which has been out of print since the day it was published, I believe. And copies were going for $200-300, is now an ebook for $10.
Oh, that's great.
So it essentially covers it covers all the superheroes and fantastic, villains and heroes of Victorian England and in the United States, and I think France as well. It's a great resource.
Sweeney Todd, Barney the Vampire.
Yeah.
Very long chapters on them.
Right. Really decent book to have in your reference collection.
Well, that's great to know. I'm sure there's plenty of people watching that.
Yeah. Jess Nevin
didn't know that.
If you're going to read Alan Moore's League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, this is the book you need.
Right. And Jess Nevins is the guy that wrote the annotated guide to the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Nope, several volumes.
Yes. So worth picking up as an ebook if you have an extra $10. Or
that's good to know.
It's actually a library book, so you can borrow it for free if you've got that service.
Yeah, I found that very useful.
Yeah.
And you're allowed, I think you're allowed up to 10 books, I think it is. So
I don't know.
Kindle Unlimited? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think you're allowed to have 10 books checked out, so you just have to read. So, like, there was some I'm going to have checked out for a very long while.
Yeah, me too.
if not
even checked out for 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Kindle Unlimited. It's great. Especially if you don't have a lot of money for, I think it's $9.99 a month. You got hell of a lot of books that you can read at any time without paying for them. So I think of it sort of as a Netflix for books in a way.
It's not just to point out, it's not everything on Kindle.
No, but it's a hell of a lot.
It is. I have found it very. Someone say, I got to read this and say, oh, it's I don't have to pay the $12 for the book. It's on Kindle Unlimited for free.
Yeah, it's not the. I don't want to sound like an Amazon spokesperson, but it's not the crappy Kindle books. There's some really good Kindle books on Kindle Unlimited. So if you're poor like me, it's very useful. So anyway, thanks guys for being on the show again and discussing Watchmen and so forth. And if you're watching the show and you've not read these guys, please do so. JoePulver.com will take you to his books on Amazon. PeteRollick.com will do the same, and RickLay.com, L-A-I, will do the same. So.
Just after the show, Pete, I want to talk to you about something briefly.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Thanks for watching, and send me your emails if you want to be part of the contest. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you next Sunday.